God, did you guys listen to that idiot who said it was going to be a boring trade deadline, especially for the Guardians? I would hate to listen to that guy's thoughts after the Guardians made a really interesting trade.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Everybody, welcome to Locked On Guardians, the podcast that predicted the Guardians would do absolutely nothing at the trade deadline, nothing interesting at all. And here we are, talking about a trade. I'm Justin Latta, your host. Thanks for listening. Thanks for liking Locked On Guardians, your first listen today and everywhere, every day, everywhere you can get podcasts, all for free, no matter where you go. The Guardians did not give away Aaron Civale for free, thankfully. Look, a lot of people are really up in arms about this trade. You got half the corner of the internet who is like, why did the Guardians trade Aaron Civale? They're a half game out of first place. What are they doing? They have no pitching. And the other half is like, great, another trade with the Rays. Jake Bauers went really well. Then you got people who are like, maybe this guy will be good. I don't know. You can't please everybody. Nobody's really happy. Maybe some people are really happy. This is one of those trades that really takes a lot of nuance and context, and I hope that's why you're here. That's why you're listening. Want to let you know why you're listening. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use Locked On MLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase when you do that. Maybe you want to get tickets to Kyle Manzardo's MLB debut, whenever that may be. I think the important thing here to note about this trade is that this is not. It goes two ways. Like I'm going to say, it's not a seller's trade. It's not a we're punting 2023. This is it. Look next year. In a lot of ways, it definitely is. There's definitely some content. There's definitely some connotations of that, without a doubt. But it's not a trade that you're also saying we're going for it this year either, or it's not a trade that would suggest they just don't want to win. This is a trade that I think is not dependent on the division race right now. The Guardians very rarely in the last several years have ever put one foot into the deep end one way or the other. If you go back to after the 07 team, 08, 09, you did have the Cliff Lee trades, the Victor Martinez trades. Those all hurt. Nobody liked those. They were unpopular for a long time. Those were clear sellers trades. That was, hey, these guys, the CC Sabathia trade, those were all guys they were punting for the next 4 years on. The Bartolo Colon trade, all that stuff. That's punting far down the road. This isn't necessarily that kind of trade, because Kyle Manzardo, we're going to talk about him later, he could help you next year. And Aaron Civale, while you do have him under contract for another 2.5 years, command-wise, there's a lot of things going on there that made sense for the Guardians to capitalize on the opportunity. And that's why I'm saying this trade is not division race specific, because the Guardians could have made this trade up 10 games. They could have made it back 10 games. Didn't really matter. And let's also remember, too, if we're going to talk about the division race, the Guardians are not in the race in any other division. The NL Central, they'd be in it. This team is not in the AL NL Central. They are not competing for a playoff spot this year, most likely. So that would be a reason to make the trade. That would be race specific. This is not division race specific, because again, this is a trade the Guardians could have made no matter whether they were in first place or last place. And it would look a lot easier to make that trade, because if you had a healthy pitching staff, like if Shane Bieber and Tristan McKenzie are doing their thing and they're healthy and you're not worried about that kind of stuff, then you can make this trade and say, yeah, it doesn't matter, And the thing that hurts is that, Kyle Manzardo's not really helping you win this year. He's not. So this trade does hurt the Guardians in 2023. I don't think we can make a mistake about that. But you're capitalizing on the value of Aaron Civale. This is a very unique trading deadline. And again, the Guardians, like I was saying, are not a team that is in full buy or sell mode. 2016, they were clearly all in. They were buying. 2017, same thing. 2018, didn't really do a whole lot of buying, but they were in on, they got Josh Donaldson, made some other trades. They got Brad Hand that year. They were all in on those years. So Cleveland does have windows where they are all in. They are not selling, or they are not, towing the line between buyer and seller. This is one of those trades. They are still trying to toe that line. They are opportunistic about these sorts of things. And Aaron Civale represented a player who was at his peak value. He had 2.5 years of control left, or 2 1/3, whatever you want to call the rest of the season. He was pitching at his best that he's ever pitched. And he's been healthy, at least for the last couple of starts. He's already been injured this year before. They moved Civale at his peak. They looked at the trading deadline and they said, there are no pitchers on the market that are coming with the cost control of Aaron Civale. So they took a look at the market, what sellers were getting for rental players, for rental pitchers. Now, Aaron Civale is not Max Scherzer. He's not any of those kind of players. So they capitalized on a guy who had club control left, came at a very cheap cost to club control, and they did it with a guy who has never pitched a full season before. He has constantly been injured. Some of these have been a little more serious than others. He's had some forearm, some other elbow issues. He's nothing too serious, but he's had a lot of other dings and dents in terms of like a glute injury, a hamstring injury, just other things that have popped up. They capitalized on his value for a guy they probably felt like wasn't going to hold up over the next 2.5 years. They weren't going to pay. And they went out and acquired a player they really liked who can help them next year. And he fills a serious organizational need. Now, we're going to talk about whether or not this is going to pan out. We're going to talk about the hitter that is Kyle Manzardo. You're going to have questions about that, and I get that. And it's okay to have those questions. But this is really just trying to jump the market. This is really trying to say, this is a player that we can get a good prospect for in return who can help us next season. And we didn't feel comfortable with going forward with Civale in terms of his injury history, and he wasn't going to get any higher value. This was a unique opportunity to make that deal. We've been saying for months now, doesn't make, a month now since the Shane Bieber injury, doesn't make sense to trade Aaron Civale. And I know people say they're a half game out of first place. They are. And Kyle Manzardo is not going to help you win the division race in 2023. Is Aaron Civale, how far is Aaron Civale taking you this year? And I get, like I've been saying the last couple episodes too, that better to make the playoffs than not. If they can kind of make some moves to try to help themselves this year, maybe they still will. I don't know. I was the guy who was sitting here telling you that they weren't going to make any moves. If they did, they're going to be very insignificant. This is a significant move in terms of, the guy that represents the one starting pitcher still in the rotation from opening day. But, with a guy with that injury history, the Guardians have been so focused on getting out from under pitchers before they kind of, I don't want to say expire is not the right word, but before they break down a little more. I mean, Corey Kluber, the Trevor Bauer thing, that's its own animal. Mike Clevenger, Carlos Carrasco hasn't really been super healthy, hasn't been great this year. Maybe they can still find a way to get Carlos Carrasco back this year. The Mets are clearly selling. They still are going to try to win next year, but for this year, they are definitely selling. There's no doubt. And they should sell because they're not anywhere near a playoff spot. But yeah, this is a trade I think the Guardians could have made 10 games up or 10 games down. Now, I will say if they're 10 games up and their rotation is as it is, they're definitely not making this deal because, this is a guy that's going to help you. You're going to need for the postseason. You're in it. But again, if they had Bieber healthy, if they had McKenzie healthy, doing their thing, and you've got, Gavin Williams and Logan Allen and Tanner Bybee and even Cal Quantrill, who was a good piece last year, you could still make this trade. doing that because you've got other healthy rotation pieces. Now they probably were and are going to explore Shane Bieber trade in the offseason, depending on his health situation. You took advantage of a guy whose peak was high, and instead of getting quantity back, they went with a one-player return. Does that mean they got quality? Does that mean the market wasn't super strong for Civale? It sounds like there were other suitors out there for him. They took a guy they felt was going to help them in the long term as soon as next year. And again, I know that kind of hurts them in the short term this year, but I don't think it really matters. I think this is all about the opportunity represented by Civale's peak on the trading market. There's not a lot of guys in the market like Civale right now in terms of club control, and the Rays needed a starter and rental prices were high. And it was like, well, why would you pay for a rental if you can get a guy under cost control? And the Rays were the right team to do that with, because obviously they run a low payroll and they wanted club control, cost control in Civale. So this is a deal for both teams that is capitalizing on an opportunity. There weren't a lot of players like Civale in the market. The Rays obviously have a ton of injury concerns with their pitching staff. They've got a lot of guys on the injury list right now, as well as the way the Guardians do as well. The Rays are hoping they can get a couple of these guys healthy at the same time to make a run in the postseason. They're in. They had a great start to the year. The Guardians are not running away with this division this year, and I don't know that they're going to have enough pitching to hang on in this division race. You're going to hope that you get a couple of guys back healthy and it works out. Now you're banking on the rookies even more, even though you keep saying you want to get them some rest and you want to control their innings a little bit. I don't know if you can do that now. So yeah, this is definitely not going to help them in 2023. It's not going to hurt them as much as you think. And yeah, I know Civale's pitched really good the last couple of starts, and he's been, arguably their 1A and 1B with Tanner Bybee, but this is a bet on getting out from under Civale before his value went down and getting a player who they think can help long-term as soon as next year. So it's very complicated. I think the division race really doesn't factor in here. I know some people are going to say, well, if they were up 10 games in the division, they wouldn't make this trade. If you're up 10 games in the division, I assume McKenzie and Bieber are healthy. And if Civale's pitching the way they do, and you've got the rookies you got, I think you can capitalize. Maybe the return's different. Maybe like you're getting a couple different pieces. Maybe there's a piece that can help you this year. Like the Trevor Bauer deal. Remember, they got Franmil Reyes and they got Yasiel Puig. They got a couple minor leaguers. The minor leaguers did not help them. Puig was a little bit helpful, man, and Franmil certainly had his moments as well. The Guardians opted for quality here, for one piece of the return instead of multiple. And again, I know those pieces helped you in 2019, but they made that trade to kind of restack the deck in 2019, and they were still a good team in 2019. They didn't make the playoffs, but they had 93 wins. I don't know if this team's going to do that, but I don't know if Aaron Civale was really going to get them where they wanted to go in the postseason anyway. Remember a year ago when Aaron Civale, pitched Game 5 of the ALDS and everybody was mad about it and didn't pitch well, and now all of a sudden, I know everything matters in context. The divisions, the rotation's not healthy, so I think you just remove the situation completely from this trade, and you just look at it as this guy's got great value. He's not really going to be a part of our future. We've got, rookie pitchers we want to bring along eventually, and we really need some hitters in this system. The offense is bad. This is a guy we think can help fix that next year, and we're making this trade whether or not we're wherever we are in the division. Division is a separate thing. So that's why I think it doesn't really factor into this at all. Let's talk a little bit more about Kyle Manzardo, his impact at first base, what kind of player he can be, how this affects the other first baseman on the roster, and how the Guardians are going to replace Aaron Civale at this time, all coming up on Locked On Guardians. Maybe you want to see Kyle Manzardo's MLB debut. Maybe that's next year. Maybe not. Whatever event you're trying to go to, it's the end of the summer. Do you want to get those tickets? Don't worry about it whenever the event is, because you can forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for any games. The Hall of Fame games coming up. You could probably get tickets on there, and you don't have to worry about getting them too far in advance. You wouldn't have had to worry about planning. So with Game Time Guarantee, you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less of any of those events, Game Time is going to credit you 100%, 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account and use Locked On MLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On MLB for $20 off that first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Well, by the time you're listening to this, Guardians and Astros will have already played game one of their series. Not going to cover that in this one, obviously, because we're going to focus on the trade today of Aaron Civale. So come back on Tuesday and you can hear some Guardians and Astros talk. But listen to the game at 8:10 on your SiriusXM app. Just search Guardians on that app. Okay, Kyle Manzardo. I know everyone not super thrilled about trading with the Rays. I know everyone is going to look at the Jake Bauers stuff. I'm sorry. I feel however you want, but I think that's a lazy take. I think it's a lazy take to go right to the Jake Bauers thing, to go to all the trades they've made with them. I think it's a lazy take. Nobody is dealing with them in that context, okay? I know they haven't done well in trades with the Rays, and I know Jake Bauers wasn't a good prospect, but you didn't end up good here. He was a good prospect at one time. You got to take those things out of the context of these deals. It is lazy, and there are no teams in baseball who operate that way. And you might say, well, maybe they should because it's not working out for them. It's not how this works. Kyle Manzardo and Jake Bauers are very different players. Jake Bauers ran an absurdly high ground ball rate in the minors. Kyle Manzardo gets the ball in the air quite a bit. And in fact, he has never had a season in the minors, okay, except for 2021. And that was 13 games in the complex league. So outside of 13 games in the complex league, which you all know I hate and has no value, he's never had a season where he's hit more ground balls than fly balls. This is a guy who gets the ball in the air. He makes a lot of contact. And I know you might say, oh, the Guardians have a lot of guys that make contact, and none of it goes very far. I think Manzardo hits the ball harder than a lot of guys at the major league level for the Guardians right now, aside from guys like, Josh Naylor and sometimes Jose Ramirez. I mean, we're talking about a guy who, let's see, max exit velocity this year in AAA, 111.9. Average exit velocity is 90. Launch angle of about 20, which is good. It means he gets the ball in the air. Hard hit rate of 48%. 48% hard hit rate is not a joke. That is pretty good. I don't know that he has above average raw power. What I do think is different here is, look, the Guardians have a lot of Steven Kwans. They have a lot of Tyler Freemans. They have a lot of guys who have 40 grade power, right? That's below average power. I think Kyle Manzardo is more like fringe average to average. And I think you can maybe unlock above average with that. The Guardians are hoping for guys like Kwan and Freeman to go from 40 to 45, whereas I think you're more likely on Manzardo to be like a 45 to a 50 and into a 55, depending on how good you feel about that. So the range of power there is a little bit different. Like you're taking, and for context, that's the 20/80 scouting scale, where 40 is below average, 45 is fringe, 50 is average. And you're talking 8 to 10 homers for like a Kwan Freeman type. With Manzardo, you're talking 12 to 15 range, 12 to 18 range. And with a little bit of, extra work, you're talking more like a 18 to 25 range. And yeah, this team definitely lacks 30 home run hitter in the middle of the order. There's no doubt about that. But if you get a guy who can hit 280, who gets on base at a 340, 350 clip, and because he walks quite a bit, doesn't strike out, puts the ball in play. If you're getting 25 home runs from that kind of guy, or 22 to 25 home runs from that guy, that's a valuable player. And yeah, it's only at first base, so the value's dinged a little bit in terms of positional flexibility, and you kind of want more offense out of that sort of guy. Yeah, I definitely understand that. There's a lot of people out there who really like Kyle Manzardo and think that he could have above average power and hit 25 homers. and have a healthy walk rate. And he might be able to hit close to 300, if not, right below it. It's definitely a hit over power profile, but it's not like he doesn't have power. Like I said, this is not a Stephen Kwan type. This is not a Tyler Freeman type. This is not, I'm trying to think of other examples here. This is not, Miles Straw. We're talking about a guy who is close to having, average power. And it's not, like I said, it's not a 30. I don't even know if Josh Naylor is a 30 home run hitter, but what if I told you that Kyle Manzardo was Josh Naylor? Would you take another Josh Naylor on this team? I would. I think that would be a great fit for this team. I don't see why Kyle Manzardo can't become that guy. I don't know if he's going to necessarily have as much power as Josh Naylor, but Josh Naylor has never maxed out his power either. Let's be honest here. Josh Naylor has 70 grade raw power. He can hit the heck out of the baseball. He has never gotten to all that. And even as good as he is this year, like Josh Naylor is a 40 home run type power guy. He just doesn't get to all the power. He's still a valuable hitter and a good hitter. He's really blossomed this season. Kyle Manzardo doesn't have 40 home run power, but Josh Naylor has never gotten to that. I think what Josh Naylor is doing this season is, I think, what Kyle Manzardo can get to. I don't think he has the power upside Naylor does, but Naylor has never realized all of that. But I would take another Naylor in this lineup. I absolutely would. I think you're talking about even maybe a Yandy Diaz type. You're talking about a guy who walks plenty, who, is going to hit 20. It took a while for Yandy Diaz to get there. And this is the nice thing about Manzardo is that he gets the ball in the air. So you're not worried about whether or not he's going to hit for power because all the balls are on the ground. None of the balls are on the ground here. Okay. It's not a 3 true outcome guy. He is kind of a nice balance of what Cleveland does want. It seems like, Cleveland hasn't drafted any of these 30, 40 home run hitters. They've drafted a lot of guys who have turned into 270, 280 hitters who can hit 5 to 10 homers. Manzardo is kind of the middle of those things. I think Manzardo is what you're hoping for with some of these guys, right? You're hoping that they have this great hit tool that they can unlock some more power out of. Whereas you don't have to take it that far to get Manzardo to the power you're hoping for. Like you're going to get maybe, like I said, 20 to 22, maybe 25 home runs out of him with a good average and a good ability to walk. You don't have to, and you won't have to sacrifice, batting average. And I know his batting average AAA is down. Batting average on balls in play is down a little bit, which I think he's getting a little bit unlucky. He's pulling the ball plenty this year. He's getting the ball in the air plenty. He's hitting a lot of line drives. I think he's gotten a little unlucky at AAA, to tell you the truth. I know he has a shoulder issue right now. Guardians expect him to be back sometime this season. He's working back from the strain. Hasn't sounded serious anywhere. I haven't heard anybody super concerned about that. And a lot of Rays people think that he's going to be an impactful hitter and soon. There's a lot of people who really like him from the Rays side of things. So, like I said, this is not a guy who he's not going to help the Guardians this year. Let's be honest about that. He is not. And unless they make another move here, I guess I shouldn't really jump the gun too much because who knows? If they make another move with Josh Bell. Josh Bell has certainly not, panned out the way everybody hoped. He probably is going to opt into his contract next year because he hasn't done well and he's not going to get a better deal on the free agent market. I don't know if the Guardians can move him. I really don't. That's a big question right now. So if they could move him, maybe then you might see Manzardo sometime this year. But I think regardless, he's not coming up and making a division race impact this year. And I know I said that the Guardians did make this trade with that in mind. And I still think they make this trade in a lot of situations, regardless of where they are at in the division anyway. But I think Manzardo can be a really good prospect. I think he can hit. I just think it's lazy to automatically go to the Tampa Bay, Jake Bauers, blah, blah, blah. They rip us off every time. Look, the Rays are tough to trade with. The Guardians are. That's why the Rays are the only team willing left to trade with the Guardians because they're difficult to trade with. In a lot of cases, they do well in trades elsewhere. And with the Rays, it hasn't worked out yet. But, like I said, I think they cashed in on Civale's value. And there's a lot of people out there who really like Manzardo a lot more than they ever did Jake Bauers, if you're really stuck on that whole comparison. I think they're two very different players, to tell you the truth. And I think Manzardo winds up getting to a little more power. I think Manzardo, again, is about, I don't know, I think he's further ahead offensively than Bauers really ever was. Let's talk about who replaces Civale in the rotation. Let's talk about the impact on first base as we wrap up this edition, a trade edition of Locked On Guardians. Guardians and Astros Game 2 on Tuesday at 8:10. Make sure you are listening to all of the action on your SiriusXM app. Just search Guardians on the app. Who replaces Civale? Well, immediately, Noah Syndergaard takes a spot on the roster. He pitched on Monday. And again, you're not going to hear me cover the Monday game between the Astros and the Guardians on this episode because we're just going to focus on the Aaron Civale trade. So check back for Wednesday's episode for more action on that. Immediately Noah Syndergaard, and look, Peyton Battenfield was scratched on Saturday from his start, or I think it was Friday. He pitched on Sunday. Kind of seems like they had him lined up just in case the trade happened earlier. That kind of explains things now, I think. So that immediately think that Peyton Battenfield might be part of the rotation going forward, at least in the short term. Chris Antonetti did talk about Hunter Gaddis. He talked about Joey Cantillo. Hopefully one of those guys will be an option as well, especially it would be nice to see it be Cantillo. We'll see. His last start was okay. It was good on the surface. I think there were some things below that needed some work, but that's not why we're here. So I think immediately it's going to be Battenfield. I would say he'll probably take the next turn of the rotation just because it seems like they got it lined up. But we'll see. So in the short term, it's going to be Battenfield. It's going to be Gaddis. At some point, I think we may get a look at Joey Cantillo. That'll be exciting as well. In the long term, the Guardians are hoping in a few weeks to get Cal Quantrill back. So hopefully he'll take one of those spots as well. And, fingers crossed in September, you've got two pitchers that are really good that hopefully don't need surgery and they can pitch in September. Who knows what that'll look like by then? I don't know. The Guardians continue to say they're hopeful, but that's what they're going to say anyway. And I think anything you get from them, to be honest with you, is a bonus. I don't think anything you get from Bieber McKenzie is a bonus. You can't count on it. I think you're just lucky if you get out of this without surgery with those two. So yeah, Quantrill hopefully comes back and gives you something. And in the meantime, Battenfield and Gaddis, and hopefully we'll see Cantillo at some point. Guardians are hopeful of those two. As far as first base is concerned, I don't know why. I shouldn't even give credence to this, but there are people out there like, oh, what are they going to do with Josh Naylor? Josh Naylor is not going anywhere. I mean, in the offseason, if you're talking about, value, cashing in on value, maybe they could trade Josh Naylor at peak value. I don't think they will, but I guess they could explore it after the season. It's not going to be this year. The Josh Bell thing, I think if they could find a taker for his contract, I think they would do it, to be honest with you. It has not worked out. I don't think he's been any good lately, and he's going to opt in next year. I think they're kind of stuck with Josh Bell unless would they pay down his salary? I don't know, to move him. We'll see. And I don't think that's why I don't think Manzardo comes up this year, but we'll see. If they can find a taker for Bell, that would be awesome. And you could see Manzardo this year. But again, Manzardo is probably not due back for another couple weeks with his injury, and it'll be past the trade deadline. And they talked about him going to AAA. So I think that the course is that Bell is here this season. I think Bell could be gone in the offseason. They can finally take a for his contract. We'll see about that. I don't think they'll just outright release him if he picks up his option. They still have to pay him. I don't think that'll happen. So we'll see. In terms of first base, I mean, look, this organization doesn't have a lot of first basemen. I like Mike Caprice. I don't know if he's a starter long term, to be honest with you. John Kenzie-Noel, I think you've heard me before talk about. I just don't think he's going to hit the big league level. He has not figured out AAA pitching whatsoever. Hits a couple of 400-foot home runs, and then after that, it's a lot of nothing. So he's a first baseman in name only. I mean, I don't see him playing outfield. I don't think he's an okay outfielder. He's definitely not a third baseman. So this fills an organizational need in terms of a prospect at first base they didn't have. We'll see what happens. The It's not first base is not a strong position for them in the minors. And I think right away, Manzardo was a top 5 prospect in this organization. I think he goes in right around Rocchio and a couple other pitchers in the minors. We'll probably talk about that more after the trading deadline ends. Again, just walk away knowing that this trade doesn't necessarily have to do with where the Guardians are in the standings this year. It has to do with Civale's value and getting out, trading him before he gets hurt again and getting something that's going to be a huge organizational boost. You hope with Manzardo. Let's not say for sure, but there's a lot of people who like him. The talent is certainly there. The numbers have been in there in the minors. Hopefully you're getting something of value for Civale. And I don't mind the trade at all if this works out. If it doesn't work out, I don't know. I still think moving Civale now makes a lot of sense given his value if they got a good deal out of it. Time will tell. This is not a trade you can grade right now. And if you're reading anybody who thinks they're grading the trade right now, they have no idea what they're talking about. They don't. This is the trade you're not going to be able to grade for a while. Hopefully you can start grading it as soon as next year. We'll see. I don't necessarily think the Guardians are out of the race at this point. I think they're still very firmly in it in terms of the AL Central. I really don't know what they were going to add. Maybe they still will add to the Major League roster this year. But again, I think this is a trade that they make regardless of their divisional standing. I don't think it had a whole lot to do with where they were. I think it had to do with the opportunity to get Kyle Manzardo regardless of where they were. So that's my takeaway. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. I'm sure everybody's got lots of thoughts on those. Again, check back Wednesday for an episode on the Astros and Guardians series. We're going to leave this episode because there was so much to talk about in this trade. So thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading, reviewing, all that stuff. It helps. Go Guardians, go, and hope the best for Kyle Manzardo.